Welcome. My name's Kim Farrant and I'm your host for this evening for the very first What Men Really Think About. And tonight's topic is about what men really think about their bodies, which is of great fascination to me. This is the first in a series of ongoing forums, and the forums are looking at issues that men find it sometimes difficult to talk about, issues that maybe are taboo in society, issues that maybe they can cerebrally talk about but can't connect to with a sense of emotion, heart, vulnerability, whatever that may be. So I wanted to create a space which was safe for men to do that, to encourage, I suppose, role models really, especially for younger men, but even for older men who maybe come from a generation where it's even more difficult to speak about feelings and things like that. So I have chosen a very, very, very special lineup of men this evening to share this with you and with me, which I will now introduce. So on my left, we have John Chaplin Fleming. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Kim.
John is the co-creator and co-star of the internationally renowned Scared Little Weird Guys.
Scared Weird Little Guys.
Scared Weird Little Guys. Always get that wrong. And John has been playing with them for over 20 years. And John is also a musician and composer for television and film. And he's married, a beautiful woman who's here with us this evening, and has 2 lovely children. So that's Johnny. And then we have Bobby Morley. Hi, Bobby.
Hey, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So Bobby is one of Australia's kind of up-and-coming young actors, and he's acted in several top-rating Australian TV shows, including Home and Away, The Strip,
It Takes Two and stuff like that.
Yeah, and Scorched.
Yeah, Scorched.
Sea Patrol,
yeah,
a lot of experience there. So it's really good to have you with us.
It's great to be here.
Good. And then next we have the lovely Ben Dennis. Ben hails from
San Remo, near Phillip Island.
Near Phillip Island. At the mere age of 31, Ben owns and runs his own very successful Australia-wide industrial construction company. And I'm going to keep a little bit secret what Ben's story is, but Ben is very sporty spice. He loves fishing and jumping off weird cliffs into water and surfing and stuff like that. And he's the youngest of 3 siblings.
I am.
Thank you for being here, Ben.
Thank you.
And all the way from New Zealand, from Waiheke Island,
happened to be, no.
Dr. J. Randall Farrant, who is my beloved brother. And Randall is a chiropractor, international speaker. He has degrees in philosophy, teaching, environmental science and chiropractic. And he's also married and has 3 lovely home-birthed children. Welcome, bro.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. And David O'Halloran, the lovely David. David is the president of Reclink Australia, which is a national non-profit charity providing sport, recreation, art programs for the disadvantaged. And he was also one of the organisers of the Choir of Hard Knocks.
That's right.
It was a fabulous documentary which screened on ABC. David also is the general manager of the Raymond Hayter Clinic, which is a Melbourne-based specialist addictions treatment centre.
That's right.
And he runs several charities. The guy is a maniac. He's worked so hard. And he's also a property developer and a father of 2 children, 2 grown-up children.
That's right.
Yes. So please welcome our lovely guests. Yay. Okay, so as I said, tonight's topic is the body and how men really feel about their bodies, what they think of their bodies. And I gave them a brief. I said, I want you to come up with anything that's true to you. So what I've done is I've asked them to write a story. It might be metaphorical, it might be literal, it might be reflections on their body and their feelings about their body. And then each of the men will read their story, and I'll ask them a couple of questions, and then we'll go to the next story. And then I'm going to throw it to you guys. And I'm going to start with Johnny.
Okay.
And if you can read us your story.
All right.
Take your time.
Body image to me is not simply my physical form. It's the image that's firmly rooted in my ideas about who I am and what I am. I carry a picture in my head of what I look like, who I am physically, and how I interact with other people socially and sexually. Much of the time, perhaps most of the time, I feel pretty unconscious of my body. My energy is consumed with what I'm thinking and doing and focusing on. But there are times when I'm forced to look at my body, when I see a picture of what I consider to be an attractive male body, and immediately compare myself, suddenly wishing that I paid more attention to it. Often somewhere inside I make a shallow resolution to change my ways, and this will be the last day that I overeat or the last day that I don't exercise. I feel frustrated and humiliated by my lack of commitment to my physical well-being, and yet entirely unmotivated to change it. It's quite a paradox. I have no doubt that my physical body is a manifestation of my mind and more deeply my subconscious. And that governs how and what I eat, the amount of exercise I do, how I dress, and many other factors which determine how I appear to the rest of the world. I can want to change my body consciously as much as I like, but against the strength of my subconscious, it's really not much good. And even if I'm slim and lean, would I still be dissatisfied? Is dissatisfaction with my body also a belief that my subconscious perpetuates? So where did this dissatisfaction all start? I think, as with many deep-seated subconscious beliefs I have, I feel they started with my birth. When my mum was due with me, she began to develop chicken pox. And by the time that she was in labour, she had the full-blown pox. The medical protocols of the 60s meant that I was not allowed to be touched by her or nurtured or breastfed by her for 3 weeks after I was born. And my mum would go for frequent checks to the doctor, but if he found one lesion on her body, it would be, no, you can't interact with the child, it's too dangerous. So she would go and manually express her breast milk so that it wouldn't dry up, and when I finally got to be with her, there would be something there for me. But for me, I can't know what I went through in that time, but when I feel into that situation, there are strong feelings of abandonment, and that it was somehow my fault that my mum wasn't there to nurture me, and that I was left alone often. And the formula feeding that babies were given in the 60s wasn't a complex formula. The likelihood of getting any colostrum-like material was pretty low. And the feeds would have been administered by a rigid schedule, regardless of how much I cried or the demands I might have made on the nursing staff in the hospital. I felt undesirable and unworthy, and I think that's a deep-seated belief that I have. When my mum finally got me home, she made up for the lack of nurturing, of course, and so in the surface of my psyche, I think there is like a normality, if you want to call it that. But there are underlying feelings of unworthiness which are present in my behaviour and in my self-esteem today. And through many early years, I think as a young boy, I was pretty unaware of my physical form, and I just ran around and ate food and played and worked just like a young person does. And I grew fast, so much of my overeating habits were masked by the fact that I was just growing and needed to eat a lot of food anyway. And in my early teens, I started to become aware that I was carrying extra weight, and I began wearing button-up shirts because I felt this concealed my plump belly and chest. And I wouldn't wear a t-shirt. I was just way too self-conscious about it. My body shape was the source of some ridicule at high school, where some of my less sympathetic classmates referred to me as tits, which I found extremely humiliating. And my parents even took me to the phys ed teacher at school and asked him to put me on an exercise program to change my body shape. But the only time that I could do that would be after school, and I was already totally committed. My after school time was completely taken up with another extra school activity that I was doing. And so I felt entirely powerless to change any of these circumstances. And I guess that's really how it's been since. Too busy to exercise, too busy to eat right or particularly well. Although my early life, Mum would obviously supply everything I ate, and later when I went overseas on my own after school, I ate what I wanted, and I chubbed up pretty big and returned to Australia with a nice perm and some soft jowls. I slimmed down a bit after that, but still the body image was in my head. And about 10 years ago, when I met my wife, we decided to go on a diet together which excluded simple carbohydrates, sugar, coffee, and lots of other things which I really relied upon to kind of numb my subconscious pain. I was pretty much reduced to fruit and vegetables and meat and very limited complex grains. And I was very irritable to begin with, as we both were. But once we'd been on it for about 3 weeks, that kind of subsided, and I found that all my excess body weight was just dropping off me, and I became slim and lean, and I felt really energetic. I felt transformed, and I was easily exercising, cycling and rollerblading all over the city and having a great time. And there were some of my friends who asked me if I was sick, or maybe did I have a drug habit suddenly that they didn't know about. In the end, that diet was focused on a particular date, which was my wedding, and as a target for staying slim up to that point. And I decided that enough deprivation was enough, and I began to eat all the things that I couldn't eat, and basically went back to my old body shape, which was there in my mind as a template. And you know, it's sort of, that's how it's been really. And my physical body has really gone back to that shape, which keeps me physically apologetic and psychologically less than my potential. It keeps me distanced from my sexuality and my own sense of desirability. At some point in my life, the safest place for me was out of the limelight, blending in and not being at the fullness of my potential physically or sexually. And until I choose to change that deep-seated belief, my subconscious will keep me in a physical state which is safely away from my best. The way I see my body is not how others see it. It can never be that. It's always a distortion seen through the lens of what my subconscious thinks is good for me.
Wow.
No worries. You know, I would not ever normally talk about that. It's probably the most sensitive stuff that I have.
Completely amazing.
But I'm very open to any questions from the panel or from the audience. Yeah.
Bobby's got one.
Yeah, there's just something that, hearing your story, that resonates with mine, and I guess you explain it a lot clearer than I do, because after reading my story, there's things that seem really convoluted to me. But the whole abandonment issue, and me having lost my father at 16 months and feeling this sense of worthlessness and abandonment and seeing myself completely different and thinking it was all my fault somehow, and then you get this perception of who you are, and it's funny to hear somebody else speak about it in such an articulate way, whereas I can't really grasp what that is.
Johnny, to hear you talk so openly about how your body in a way keeps you distanced from your sexuality and your sense of desirability. What's the benefits of that for you?
Let me feel into this a little bit. Wish I hadn't eaten that bit of cheese before I came on. It's really getting in the way of me connecting with my feelings.
The irony.
I think it's that I don't know, Kim, but if I did know, I would say that it's too risky for me to be a fully active human, and that I actually need to withdraw from that absolute commitment to being my absolute potential, whether it's sexually, physically, professionally, whatever it might be. I have to withhold from that so that I am safe. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I can't really identify what the dangers are, but the benefits are that I'm safe. And that is totally a construct of my subconscious, and it's not real, but it is so strong.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bobby, do you want to go next?
Sure, yes. Yeah, I can go next. I stand motionless in front of the mirror, deliberately taking off each item of clothing and then inspecting the bare flesh it exposes. Never had I paid much attention to what it felt to expose myself and assess each acute part of my body on an emotional level. Every marking of scarred tissue, a story to tell. The chemical burn in the shape of a capital F on my right hand, a reminder of a science experiment gone wrong when the girl I had a crush on foolishly dumped too much amount of silver oxide into the beaker. Or the sharp raised white line drawn across my knee from an overzealous soccer tackle. Or the seasonal freckles that invade my cheeks during summer, a constant reminder of my father that had passed just 16 months after my birth. My body tells the story of my life, a map of my self-discovery. My body, my physicality has both protected me and isolated me. As a child, primary school was unkind to me. Growing up in a small country town where coming from a mixed-race family was alien, the racial taunts were abundant, and my thick black hair and my dark complexion were a dead giveaway that I was different, let alone my proud Filipino mother. Emotionally too weak to deal with the racial slurs, my body responded and became my saviour. I learnt to use my physicality as a means of defence. I was the kid so puffed up with bravado and aggression, yet so full of pain. And I carried this peacock posture all the way through high school, making sure I was the biggest, strongest and angriest as a device to ward off the would-be tormentors. Bruce Lee and Arnold Schwarzenegger hung on my wall, my inspiration to keep up the facade of the alpha male, my heroes, my idols. Both strong and indestructible, if there was a problem it was resolved with the clenched fist. I subscribed to this mentality and it served its purpose through my schooling years. However, when it came to dealing with the real issues that laid beneath my skin, I found it was the very same aggression that protected me now hindered me. In retrospect, I was never happy with my body, and I'm still not. I always felt uncomfortable in the change room after PE at school or on swimming sports days. I would look at the other boys running around with their shirts off, absolutely oblivious to the discomfort that I was feeling. I recall a time when I was about 11 or so, and it was a sweltering summer's day. I had found the $1.80 I needed to enter the local pool on my mother's dresser, so I stole it. And I ran as fast as my stumpy little legs could handle all the way to the pool. My friends were there already, their shirts off, reclining, eating their twisties, and the sun was drawing their shadows on the wet concrete. And all my excitement seemed to just reel up inside of me, like a horse pulling up a jump that was just too big or too far for it. And I didn't want to take my shirt off. I was ashamed of what hid underneath it. And a great lump curled up in my throat, and my shame screamed at me to leave the pool, to leave my friends. I conceded to the voices in my head, and I gave my friends a thin excuse, and I slowly scuffed my way back home. And I still live with that shame. My body is the story of my life, or so I thought. I began acting at university. I didn't know why, I just knew that I loved it. Nowadays, my reasons for the choice are much clearer. Acting, for me, is the ultimate escapism. It's a chance to have a completely out-of-body experience, and maybe it's a chance for me to escape the unexplained shame. Yet, it isn't. Mentally and emotionally, I may be able to transcend who I am, but physically, I can't. And this became glaringly obvious to me when I began working in the film and television industry. I act because I love the art. So when I began professional work, the thought of my face, my body, my story becoming a commercial quantity never came to mind. Then, all of a sudden, my body became a product you could view nightly on national television. My body was no longer subject to my own thoughts. It was now a topic of the public forum. And yeah, this sounds horribly vain, but I'll just keep going. And I kind of feel weird for talking about all this. Out of my own curiosity or vanity, I began to read the reviews of my work. Yet when it came to reading the comments, it was all about what I looked like. I found images of me on websites, rating my body out of 10 with user comments ranging from yes, I would fuck him, or no, I wouldn't go near him with a 10-foot pole. The look of him makes my skin crawl. And I can say that scared little boy at the pool was now terrified. Arnold and Bruce Lee now loomed over me once again, but this time they didn't instill me with strength. Rather, they instilled me with a sense of inadequacy. What I should look like, that I needed a six-pack or I needed biceps bigger than I'd ever require. It was the first time that I guess I had been exposed to sexual objectification. And I wasn't the only male at my work feeling it. There was pressure on the guys on the show to look a certain way, and it was rarely talked about. We all suffered in our own silence. And the gossip rags and the papers labelled us as girl crazy and sex symbols, whatever. And the publicity, which is a compulsory requirement, turned us into pin-up boys for schoolgirls. And all the media fueled the fire of sexual objectification. And here I was, stuck in the middle of it, wishing I never stole my mother's $1.80. But nowadays, I've reconciled with the fact that it is part of my job to look a certain way to attain a certain physique. However, this realisation hasn't helped me to reconcile my own issues of self-perception. If anything, it's complicated it further. All the attention from the media made me question my own worth. Did I get the opportunity to work in the film and television industry based on my talent or hard work, or was it just simply because of the way I looked? When I was asked to speak about the topic of the body, I tried to collate my experiences surrounding my body and what it meant to me. And whilst doing so, it became clear to me that the topic of body and body image for me is intrinsically linked to identity. My body is a map of my self-discovery, but does that mean I'm comfortable in my own skin? Of course not. And I don't think I'll ever be, but it's a journey that's really exciting to take.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Thanks, Bobby. That's amazing. You said your body both protects you and isolates you. Does it still isolate you?
Not so much anymore. No, I mean, it was hard being young and being in a half Asian family in the country. As I get older and you meet more people and you move out of the country and you move to the city, it's nothing like that anymore, you know. And I guess it ties back into that thing where getting work, is it purely just the way I look, or is it based on my abilities? And like I've had some people say to me, you know, you're just lucky that you look this certain way, you know, that you've been blessed with this, and that's why you've fallen into this career that you're doing, you know. And it's a hard thing to kind of go to admit or you know, accept, because it just sounds so horribly vain. And
but there's also an assumption in that comment that life's easier for you.
Yeah, and
which is not the case.
Yeah, and it really does get me quite angry when people just assume that, and you know, I think it's that prejudging or labelling that happens without a chance to kind of explain myself. Or,
yeah.
You know, for people to get to know me, they just automatically think.
So it's kind of like, for instance, I worked with a man who was disabled, and he said that, you know, people would not see a man or someone's brother or someone's lover, they'd see a man with no legs.
Yeah.
So it's like you then get seen as you are just your body.
Yeah, I guess, with TV work and stuff like that, it can definitely happen. I mean, because it does become a commercial quantity. They want you to be this or that. And that's the image that's put out there, and I have no control over that. That's, you know, that's just what, you know, production companies or whoever it is want to do. And
I suppose you have the control in I quit.
Yeah, that's true. There is that kind of control, but yeah.
And it's interesting that as a child you talked about, you know, using your body and your physical aggression, and I don't know how violent that manifested as, but to avoid the emotions that you were feeling, and you said the feelings of shame, and then you get into a profession where your currency is your emotions and your body, you know what I mean? So it's like this thing that you were protecting.
On that one. Yeah. No, but I did, as a kid, I haven't really grown much for like the last 10 years. I was kind of like bigger than most kids, and I guess I did just bully people, and it's horrible. And you know, as an adult, if I saw a kid like me, you could quite easily pick it out and go, that, you know, that kid's got a lot of issues going on, and he just needs someone to step in and help him. But not knowing any other way to deal with the kind of tormentors and that kind of stuff, I just turn to aggression and violence, I guess, or just being scarier that no one would pick on me, or, you know.
Where do you sit with that now in terms of does that aggression still come up? Or?
Like I said, that aggression which once helped me and protected me, now it really stops me from being able to connect with who I am. You know, I find that anything that I'm frustrated about manifests itself in rage, or you know, that kind of aggression, and it just kind of cuts me off from anything else and really understanding it. So I have to find better ways of dealing with things instead of just getting angry. You know, I tried for such a long time to suppress anger and not get angry, but then I'd just snap. It'd just bottle up, and I'd snap, and I'd just rage, and you know, I'd lose it at my mum or my best friend or my girlfriend, and to a point where it just wasn't reciprocal to the situation that had happened. You know, someone spilt over my coffee, and I'm like, lose it and kick over the table and yell at them. It doesn't add up, you know, and that's stopped me from really kind of understanding what's going on. So, yeah.
We have a lot of awareness about that.
Yeah.
Now it seems.
Yeah, it's something you have to work at, I guess.
Yeah. And also maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but it seems like a more acceptable paradigm for men to sit in, you know, into the aggression than into I feel really vulnerable right now, into that.
Yeah.
So, maybe society's kind of also reinforcing that belief.
Possibly.
Go Bruce Lee.
Yeah, well, exactly. Bruce and Arnold, they've got a lot to answer for.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, thank you, Bobby.
Thanks.
Benjamin.
Yes, Kim.
Can you go next?
I can. If I have to.
Take your time.
I'm the youngest of three and owner of the industrial construction company working on contracts Australia-wide. Recently this year, on the 30th of June, whilst on site in New South Wales, I was informed that my sister Charmaine had been diagnosed with cancer. Leukemia, a life-threatening disease. It was called acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which I still struggle to get my lips around. Which meant nothing to me at the time, other than that she was going to die. Doctors recommended a bone marrow or stem cell transplant, which was best to come from a sibling. The facts were 30% chance of survival using chemotherapy alone, and up to 70% chance with a transplant from a sibling. Melanie, the oldest sibling, was tested and failed to be a match. This was very concerning due to the fact that there was only 1 in 4 chance of me being a match, as I was the only sibling left, and now Charmaine's only hope. Deep down I felt a lot of pressure, mainly due to the fact that if I couldn't supply my sister with these stem cells or bone marrow, her chance of dying from this disease was huge. My past hadn't helped either. I'd travelled a lot to often third world countries, had lived a promiscuous life, and I feared that my blood test results might come up with something that would jeopardise the donation being available to take place. So at my first chance I flew down from Sydney to have several blood tests and found out 2 weeks later that I was a match. This was a huge relief. I was now going to be my sister's saviour sibling. So Charmaine went through a lot of chemotherapy and treatments. This was to kill off all of her bone marrow, and in place the donation of my stem cells would go into her bloodstream and find their way into her bones to make new blood, which would kill off any cancerous cells which may have stayed around after the chemotherapy treatment. We had a lot of jokes about how she'd feel once she had taken my blood type on, and her being a dentist, having a weird sense of humour. Some of the jokes going around was maybe once this had all gone through, she'd want to go for a surf or crave a beer, which she had never done in her life. And yeah, actually, after the transplant took place, that was the first dream she had, was surfing in a remote island somewhere. And actually the second dream she had was she was in an orgy or something. And I'm not sure if it was my other stem cells talking or
I'm sure it was
her wild imagination. Sorry, Charmaine. Charmaine is a naturopath. She has a successful business, and being a naturopath, she asked me to have several blood and vitamin checks. I just wanted to be in the best tip-top shape for her to be able to give her the best chance of living. Charmaine was also lucky that Mum and Dad really wanted a boy. After having Melanie and then her, Dad still wasn't, what's the word? He wasn't ready to quit there. So yeah, I feel that she's very lucky that they wanted a boy, and yeah, I guess that if it was my sole purpose in this world to be alive, to be able to save her, then my duty's done. Yeah. And yeah, like it's now day 6 after the transplant. And everything seems to be going well. It's a long way to go still. And yeah, it's been a big journey so far, and there's a lot to go through still. But we feel positive, and yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a tough thing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Ben sent me a photo of him with Charmaine, and so, you know, she's there and she's pale and she's got no hair and she's hugging him, and he's got all these tubes, and that must have been like mid-transplant.
Yeah, it was during the transplant.
During the transplant. What did that feel like in that moment?
I actually, prior to the transplant, I felt scared that maybe it wouldn't work. I was really in fear that maybe she'd die, or, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah, the feeling of being able to do it was amazing. I feel proud, and I still get upset a lot about thinking about it, but I feel really proud, and I don't know, I feel like my life does have purpose, more so than to go surfing or to travel and be selfish, all these different needs that I always think are most important. Now that I feel I've done this, I feel great.
Pretty amazing sense of purpose, saving a life.
Yeah.
This guy floors me. And when will you know whether it's been successful?
I think it's up to 3 months where she takes on my blood type, and then starts to grow new blood, and yeah. I feel like all these things that I used to think about in the past, like what Bobby was saying about, like, you want to look good, and like John was saying, it's the pressures of being a physical type of being, and being masculine, and you want the girls to look at you and all this. I don't care about that anymore. I think if they like me, go for it. If you don't, then go for something else, because I've got bigger things on my plate now, and which mean a lot more to me than that. And all those things that you used to worry about seem like so unimportant that, yeah. Whereas now I'm more about my family, and I want to be around them. Yeah.
Do you feel more at ease in your body?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a gift.
Yeah.
Strange way to get it, but.
Yeah. Thanks, Charmaine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Brother. Dearest brother. All the way from Waiheke. Tell us your story.
Well, right now I feel as though I'm nearing one of the top of one of my high peaks on my body roller coaster. It always seems to take so much longer to get to the top of the peak, but the peak in this instance is the peak weight, not peak health. The slow gaining of weight is a result of the creeping input of foods that for years were banished but seem to be key nutrients of survival right now. Decreasing fitness and activity, which combine with the food, helps me climb steadily to the top. For me, my peaks seem to be around 115 to 122 kilo, but it's not the gross weight that causes me to then make the descent. It's usually a passing glance in a window, or a photo taken unawares of me, a silhouette or a profile of a body that seems to belong to a stranger, and a rather large stranger at that. But alas, it is no stranger. Of course, it's me. And so the comments and concerns of loved ones and friends are heard, but often met with a rebuff or a silence. Yeah, I'll go on a diet. To which is often replied, yeah, heard that before from him. So as I head towards 50, it now seems worse. And as my stronger physique of youth has developed what appears to be the beginnings of man boobs, I'm embarrassed to say that I can't see the old fella at the moment, unless I suck in the gut. And along with the thinning and greying hair on top, I'm losing that youthful V shape. My wife is making continued reference to the slanting bed. I'm running out of clothes that fit, and my second son is starting to refer to my fat belly. And I may say all of this in jest, but when I do see the photos or the reflection, I cringe, and then I cringe at cringing. I cringe at how I let it happen all over again. And this has been the body story for the majority of my adulthood. Being a health professional and one that believes in the inherent power of the body that's available in the body, I get disappointed in myself and that I don't always practice what I preach. So my life has been a body roller coaster, a journey of ups and downs, twists and turns. So I first feel I noted that I had a weight, body, food issues when I was a teenager. I was always into sports and fitness and developed a strong physique as a teenager. And what you said, John, I was the one that had the ultimate physique, and there was a really strong sense of bravado. No one ever pushed my buttons, no one ever picked on me, no one ever challenged me in any way, and that was convenient in exactly the same, for the same reason, because I could hide in there. And so I was totally intrigued how there's the same sort of feeling that was there. You know, I was the captain of the school, captain of the sports, all of that sort of stuff.
Australian shot put champion?
Yep, took it to a very high level. And so I noted that when I was a teenager, whenever I got stressed, be it whatever context it was, I would eat more crap, I'd eat more sugar, and I'd been known to actually eat cups and cups of icing sugar. Amazing stuff when I think about it now. And so, you know, when I was older, I realised I was binge eating. You can call it binge drinking or whatever you want to do, because it's amazing. I don't know if people can recognise this, but a sugar overload really helps to numb down the feelings, take the feelings away. I used to call it the lovely phase-out phase of really just not being present to myself. So the times when the times when I felt at the top of things are the times I've been my healthiest. I know for me that amidst all of this, my attitude, my mindset need to be clear and balanced when I'm on that downslope. The opposite there. So I've done a lot of personal development work over the years, which has been of absolutely great benefit, but the nature of life is that the challenges just don't seem to stop. I don't know if people have noticed that. And each time I rise back up to the peak again, it actually does give me a chance, and it's great to hear you guys talk about this, to see where those blocks are, which are contributing to the rising weight. So I've said here, my body roller coaster mirrors my willingness to work on myself. So one peak in my roller coaster saw me rise to 122 kilos, and I'm really intrigued here. I feel that my body and my perceptions are a cornerstone of my emotional journey through life. It's amazing hearing you guys talk about it. I was born premature and with a low birth weight. This was due in part to actually losing a twin. My mother actually had a full-on miscarriage and didn't realise she was still pregnant. And then I would say the stress and the toll this took on her to hold on to me meant that I was born really early, so very small. However, it did not take me long to be a huge fat baby with the nickname Winston Churchill. So I do feel from an early age something deep, physiological, psychological, chemical, stress factors, and I've explored a lot of this in the context of my work. Relating to food and weight have been a significant part of my physicality. So whilst this journey has created a lot of heartache and pain through my life, I also don't want it to become an excuse or a wound of some sort. This is why when I focus on the issues at hand, then the action required to become healthier is a lot easier to do.
So as your sister, I've seen a lot of that journey. And I remember, you know, being a kid, we used to call Randall the Incredible Hulk because, well, he actually dressed up as a party. We painted him green, and then he burst out as the Incredible Hulk because he actually was that big and muscular, and he used to protect me, but also occasionally whack me. Bugger. But anyway, well, I'm interested at that age because it sounds like that's when the eating started as well. Like, what prompted you to bulk up like that, to become the big guy?
I think I was always keen on sports, and sports made me feel solid and strong.
Why did you need
and
to
comfortable?
feel
because I felt in other aspects of my life I wasn't. Context of growing into my own sexuality and being a teenager and all of that, I just felt totally ill at ease in those areas. And I think having this bravado, this front, allowed me to pass through that without anyone noticing that there was an issue there. So.
Mm-hmm. No one's going to pick on the tough guy.
Oh, not even the tough guy. I wasn't necessarily that. It was just I had this It was like a barrier. Still is, whether it's up here or down.
There's incredible honesty that you spoke about, you know, the jokingly, the way you described, you know, man boobs or whatnot. And I'm just wondering, like, how you sit with that, because you're a health professional. Your whole, and, you know, I've seen Randall work, and he's an incredible, you know, health educated speaker and chiropractor and changes people's lives. And yet there's this kind of, it seems like almost like a split within you.
Well, it's obviously a gift I have in being perceptive in the context of others. But when it's me, it's a different, I can't see it. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the bigness and the bravado and the size and stuff was because there was a lot of confusion in terms of trying to figure out where I sat in the world. Mm-hmm. So it's a hell of a lot easier to work out someone else's issues than my own.
I love this guy. Thank you. Thank you. And lastly, David, please share with us your story.
Lucky last. It's hard for me to articulate the story of my body as a thing on its own, and I tend to think of my body as a physical part of me that houses the other parts of me, where my thoughts occur, my brain, where my feelings are felt, my heart, and where my spirit resides, my soul. So to talk about one without the other is difficult for me. What I can tell you, perhaps, is a chronological timeline of from then till now, and how that journey has impacted on this body. I was and have always been a physical person from a very young age, and that's how I connected with the world mostly. My early teenage years were difficult, and at school I found it was easier to compete with others on the sports field, and I was very competitive in everything that I did. I think it was my way to get validation at a time of uncertainty for me as a young man. I was also physically punished as a child and a teenager. And this certainly had an impact on me in the way I viewed authority. I didn't understand the reasons for the punishment often, and this confused and entrenched my rebellious nature. I determined that no amount of physical pain that somebody else inflicted on me would change me at my core. So I internalised my feelings in order to protect myself. In my late teens, I started to dabble in alcohol and marijuana with my friends and found comfort in the way that my feelings weren't so big and my confidence grew. I self-medicated to cope with the pressure I felt I was under to complete secondary school and get to university. This dabbling was to become a major part of my 20s and a source of great pain and confusion for both my body and my mind, not to mention the feelings that accompany addiction of any kind. My addiction to mood and mind-altering substances was a burden for me physically, emotionally and spiritually. I did not know the impact that this was to have on me until the party was almost over. The aches and pains and being sick from withdrawal as the brain screams for more is agonising, to say the least, and feeding the habit to avoid withdrawal and to avoid the emotional hurt is relentless and felt like Groundhog Day. It was because of this pain that I sought help and was guided by a GP to where I was fortunate to find recovery in my early 30s. And as a direct result of, a consequence, if you like, of my addiction was that I was diagnosed with hepatitis C in the early 90s, and I took affirmative action through alternative therapies to remove this problem from my body, and I'm happy to report that it's no longer present. So for the past 22 years I've made a conscious decision to live life on life's terms, and I've been totally abstinent from any alcohol or drugs, and that's got to be good for this body. In the recovery process I was interested in learning about some of the reasons I use drugs and alcohol as an escape from my inner turmoil and the outer real world. I did lots of therapy and used many different treatment modalities to explore and educate myself, and have found some interesting things about me. I don't live comfortably in this skin when it comes to feelings, and have suffered for many years with self-loathing, anger, shame, guilt, fear about who I was and what I'd become in active addiction. As the years rolled on through my 30s and 40s and now into my 50s, the art of living and growing up emotionally and being a functional and responsible male in this world have meant new directions. Self-care has become a way of life for me, and I use things like traditional Chinese medicine, massage and meditation for self-preservation. Not the sort of things a typical Aussie male might choose as ordinary everyday pastimes. I am often physically and emotionally tired, and often am prepared to sacrifice my well-being for perceived achievements in other external areas like financial and work-related success. In the years leading up to my 50s, I always thought mentally that I was still younger than my years, and see this as a kind of denial of my ageing and perhaps the loss of a younger man. It occurs to me that men don't have a defining time or a change of life like women do, so the movement into midlife is more subtle. Sexually, the journey for this body has been interesting. How long have we got? I wrote that here, so I've got to say it. So, I've used my body sexually to get connected to the other sex, and that has been a large part of my physical story, particularly in my adult years. Wanting to connect with significant others, casual and permanent partnerships, and other connections, my body has been a vehicle for connecting physically to the world. I believe that most men usually have a strong sense of physicality, and this can be expressed sexually and certainly as one of connection and power. Finally, I would say that for me, enjoyment and appreciation for life itself, acceptance and surrender of my current situation and age, and gratitude for a full and colourful life to now inspire me to continue living in this body with some care and compassion. Like an old classic car that requires ongoing maintenance and replacement of parts by experts, I need to show it some love if it is to remain usable for the last part of my journey. And the one thing that I do know is that my body will eventually fail me, and that is the ultimate male vulnerability. The fact that no matter what or who I am, or indeed what I have done in this world, there will come a time when I will exist no more. Well, at least physically in this world. Perfectionism in all its manifestations is a difficult way to live as we age. And I've got here disgracefully. So I've got a couple of little things that I wrote. I didn't know where to put them, so I put them at the end. Sometimes I think that I'm young at heart, but I'm definitely older in other places. So in closing, if you want to know the secret to staying young, it's to live honestly, eat slowly, and lie about your age.
Wow, there's a lot in there. You crammed a lot into your young years. You spoke about addiction.
Yeah.
Some might say being a slave to the body.
Sure.
And I loved this line, feeding the habit to avoid withdrawal and emotional hurt. So you're now 22 years clean and sober, which is incredible, by the way. How do you deal with hurts that come up now?
Well, I suppose where I might have hidden from them before, I have to experience them and just feel them, really. So I don't really have a place to go when I'm confronted with emotional pain. So it's something that I have had to learn to sit with. So my mother passed away a few months ago. So, you know, I might have wanted to do something, but really just, you know, experiencing that and feeling that. And knowing that the feelings I'm not going to die. Whereas I might have, you know, medicated beforehand, you know, because I didn't like the way I felt, or I didn't like an emotion, or, you know, whether it was the anger, the fear, you know, whatever it was, I didn't like it, so I medicated. Now I don't medicate, so I just have to feel my feelings. And I learnt that I wouldn't die. So. Yeah, just sitting with them, really, and, you know, being supported too. I think it's vital that I talk about, you know, being supported through times by others, right. You know, by other men and by other people that can say, you know, we know how you feel, we know what you're going through, it's okay. You know, because if I've got a role model that can, you know, has been through something like that and can sit with it and not have to medicate or not act out, it gives me a little bit of something to latch on to, and by way of, you know, an example.
Thank you, David. Okay, so now it's you guys' turn. Don't be shy. They've given a lot. Malcolm.
So a lot of the discussions are about yourselves, I'm interested in hearing, maybe not from everyone, but just from a couple of people, of how you interact with your male friends in respect to the idea of your body.
I mean, I don't think that's something that men talk at this level about to each other. I mean, that would be my experience. Guys tend to skip across the surface and don't really drill down in their discussions, I don't think, about what their body's up, or talk about their vulnerability in terms of, you know, how I actually really feel when I look in the mirror. You know,
that's really taps into something you were saying. You said about you guys suffered in silence.
Yeah, at my workplace we kind of all just didn't. It was a taboo subject. You know, you don't talk about it. But I mean, amongst young guys, it's a very superficial kind of thing. You know, you might occasionally go, "Oh mate, you got to work out a bit. Like, you're getting a bit tubby around the sides, or you're drinking too much beer, or whatever." But no one ever goes beyond and says, "Oh, is the reason that you're growing your sideburns because you miss your mother?" You know, no one really talks on those levels. I mean, yet there is that kind of, I guess, competitiveness that most young male men have, that, you know, they kind of exercise or try and keep fit or whatever it is to look a certain way, but you don't admit that. You don't go, "Oh yeah, I've been working out to be hot this summer." unless you come from Sydney, possibly.
Okay, another question?
Yeah, I mean, what always intrigues me is the beautiful intimate relationships that I have with men are actually not that different to the relationships that I have with women. And I find that men can talk about their feelings. So I guess my question is A, do you agree? And B, why do we man up? How does it serve us?
Challenging question.
Man up as in behave like men.
What is that about? Why do we have to man up? Well, you know, what do you mean? What is that? Well, you know, this whole, you know, if you get knocked down, get up again. Right. Don't have a feeling. Don't show your vulnerability. Like,
I mean, I always try and think of, from an evolutionary point of view, why do we behave like we do? And men, you know, for millennia have maybe been the hunters, or, you know, and that's not true in every society, of course, but perhaps there's a certain amount of, like, if we don't talk about our feelings and get on with building the hut or making a fire or killing that thing over there, you know, then the tribe's going to survive, you know, and what do you think?
One other thing, I agree with that. But I think the one thing, particularly with what we're speaking about tonight and the body, is that, and David was saying how the slip into middle age for men is very different. There is no turning point. Women have that holy grail, the sacred womb that, you know, that they give life, and I think that's a big difference for a man there. We aren't taught to be in tune with our bodies, like women are, you know, with their period and stuff like that. Guys, we don't have that constant kind of check up, and, you know, we kind of just learn to neglect our health or not think about, you know, bearing children, or you know, I mean, well, I'm a bit younger than some of the others, so I don't really think about, you know, I'm happy to go out there and kind of destroy myself on the weekend. But yeah, I think that's one major difference for men and their bodies, is that we're not that in tune with it, because of the fact that, I don't know, I could be, I'm young and naive, forgive me, but yeah, that's one thing that seemed to occur to me.
Yeah, and there is that kind of intrinsic, I mean, you know, the euphemism of our genitalia, men are out, women are in. You know, it's like we are totally externalised, focused on whatever our task is. Women maybe, I don't know, like, I'm not going to make a generalisation, but I'm going to anyway. And maybe we're more inside, more like feeling our internal stuff. And is our, you know, we got to nurture this life place, exactly like you said. You know, it's really important to the whole species that, you know, that women are, that carry that life font, you know.
I'd like to make a comment. I think it's, you know, generational too. You know, you look back at, you know, for years, men haven't expressed their feelings. You know, we had the war years, and our parents, you know, we had defined role models, and, you know, the guy went to work, and the woman, you know, was the housekeeper, and she didn't talk about her feelings or what her husband did, and he provided, and you know, for a long time, and as we've I suppose, you know, through evolution and, you know, through the last, you know, years, generationally, we've been able. Guys do express themselves. You know, we're asked to. We've been encouraged to, demanded to. You know, there's been a lot of, you know, I suppose prompts for guys to start talking about how they feel about stuff. So as guys come out, you know, there's a confusion in that, you know, because it was easier earlier days not to talk about stuff. But it doesn't mean I agree. We are, you know, it's evidence that guys are feeling people with hearts. You know, there is millennia of protecting the woman and the home, and making sure that everything, you know, is okay, and having an external toughness to the world. Like, if you come near me or my family or my clan, my extended family, my clan, I will protect that. I have to, and I have to be, you know, it's like a Maori man that does a haka. It's all externalised. Stay away from me, I'm dangerous. It just wants to keep people away to protect, you know, and not get hurt. So I think, you know, generationally, and I think our children, it's going to be interesting if we could fast forward this conversation, you know, 20 years or so, and see what our kids are saying here, you know, as they've grown up, or my son or something. And I just think, you know, more's asked of us, and I think, you know, we're stepping up to it. I think guys are able to express themselves. They get a little bit vulnerable. Sometimes it doesn't work. You know, you do express your vulnerability and it comes back on you. That's been some of my experience sometimes. It's like, whoa, I wish I'd never said that. But I think as we take risks and try and, you know, connect a little bit deeper, you know, I'd said earlier on, you know, I spent a lot of time in my head or my groin. You know, I've got to join them in my heart. You know, that's the sort of challenge, is to get into a heart space, and that's not easy. It's easy here and it's easy here. It's not so easy here.
I find personally, amongst my group of friends, we're pretty tight-lipped about it. We don't really voice our opinions about these type of things. I find personally I do with females or girlfriends I've had in the past. I'm quite open with them, but I don't know, I guess like what John was saying about that primal type instinct, I see men like lions, and you don't show your weaknesses, you show your strengths. You have that shield or barrier up to protect yourself, and you don't want others to get in to attack you or get in and get you while you're down. So you do sort of, yeah, puff your chest out and carry on with life, and sometimes, yeah, we probably should talk more.
And sometimes life sideswipes you.
Yeah.
And you have to feel that stuff.
You do.
Yeah. It's interesting, I have a favourite quote that I don't know if I made it up. I like to think I made it up. But the quote is, there's the incredible strength that it takes to be vulnerable. And I feel like I've seen of that this evening, you know, like a vulnerability in just in an openness. And like as a woman, like, God, that gives you so much access and understanding. And thank you, guys. Please give it up. And look forward to seeing you all at the next forum. And thank you so much for your questions, and thank you guys for being so beautifully honest and open and giving of yourselves.